Round 7, here we come. The series is headed off to Spring Creek, the home of Jeremy Martin, and we will get to see him potentially race for the last time today. This is our race day update show where we go over the injury updates, the rider points, rider storylines, and even some rider statistics, pretty much everything that you would need to know before the gate drops. Alright, so the first thing we're going to get into is our injury updates, and starting off in the 250 class, we still have a slew of Star Yamaha guys out, but thankfully most of them are getting back on the bike. Daxton Bennick is still recovering from his concussion, but he's back riding. Cole Davies is now back on the bike after being landed on at Salt Lake, and Max Anstey is coming up on about 7 weeks post-surgery, and he should be getting back on the bike soon as well. Even Pierce Brown is back on the bike after hitting that tough block and that gnarly back injury that he had at the opening round of the East Series of Supercross. Right now, no return dates are confirmed for any of those 4 guys, but the speculation is that some of them or all of them could return at some point, maybe just for SMX for Max Anstey since he did score some pretty good points. Daxton Bennick does seem to be a little bit closer to being able to return, and Cole Davies might return for some motocross as well. Unfortunately, their teammate Caden Manier is going to be out after having surgery to repair his UCL. No real return date for him right now. And then we have the 6th Star Yamaha guy of Jeremy Martin. He's going to be returning for his final send-off essentially with the team and maybe his career. Like I said in the intro, this is literally his home race. He's from here. He lived here his whole life. He grew up here. Hopefully he can have a pretty good ride, some good results, stay off the ground, and have a good send-off. Julian Beaumer has been dealing with some wrist issues ever since his crash at High Point. So he's definitely struggled at Southwick and last weekend at Redbud. So it sounds like he's going to sit out at least the next few rounds and then try to come back at Ironman. Casey Cochran is out for the foreseeable future after dislocating his shoulder and suffering some ligament damage. Ty Masterpool had a practice crash and ended up breaking his hand. Sounds like he's going to be returning before the end of the season, but he is going to be out this week. His teammate Cameron McAdoo is still recovering from tearing his ACL. He's back on the pedal bike, but doesn't seem like he's going to be returning to racing anytime soon. And then, of course, we have Chance Hymas in a similar situation with his torn ACL, as well as Gavin Towers, who also tore his ACL. Then we have Styles Robertson with his chronic wrist issues. I feel like that probably deserves its own video. It's pretty gnarly. Really hate to see that, but he's going to be out. Nick Romano is still recovering from his shoulder injury. He's looking to return before the end of the season, but he's going to be out this weekend. Jet Reynolds is on a similar timetable after breaking his leg in Supercross. He's back on the bike and looking to potentially return by Ironman. Evan Ferry ended up tearing his Achilles at Anaheim 1, and it seemed like he was going to be returning last weekend at Redbud, but now it sounds like he's going to be out for the rest of the season, so he essentially missed the entire year. Definitely a big setback for him, so really hate to see that. And then we have Carson Mumford with his mystery ankle injury. He's been back on the bike riding for quite a bit, and he was on the entry list last weekend. There was some speculation whether or not he would return to the series, and that speculation still kind of remains at this point. We don't know exactly what's going on with him. And then last but not least, we got to give a shout out to Trevor Collip. Looks like he's starting to do a lot better. Things were pretty dark there for a few weeks. Really hated to see that, but thankfully he's back on his feet thanks to some crutches. It looks like Road to Recovery has been able to help him out a little bit, and the moto community has definitely rallied around him, so at least there's that. But given the way things were looking early on, he's definitely made a great recovery so far, so hopefully that trend will continue and he'll make a full recovery. Moving on to the 450 class, man, that escalated quickly. This list was very short last week, and it is not short anymore. So we still have Dylan Ferrandis working on his leg injury. He's had some stress fractures that he was managing throughout Supercross, and he's been taking the Motocross series off to try to recover from that. There's still some speculation if he'll return at all for Motocross or SMX, but right now he's going to be out. Ken Roxon is back up on his feet after that ankle surgery. When he'll be back on the bike remains to be seen. And then we have some pretty big news with Cooper Webb now going to be out for the remainder of the Motocross series after dabbing his leg and tweaking his knee. Now, it doesn't sound like this was an ACL. I'm not really sure exactly what it was. He was pretty vague when he talked about it. I'm going to go ahead and speculate that he tore his meniscus, but that is purely speculation just on the way that they're talking about it. Sounds like he is going to have some sort of surgery. You really hate to see this. He was not exactly lighting the world on fire, but he was definitely one of the guys at the front of the pack. And it was just a hard weekend for him out at Redbud. He crashed in the first turn and then charged all the way up through the field, even with his torn up knee and bent bars and things like that. all the way up into the top 10 just to run out of gas on the final lap and not even finish the race or score any points. And then he still managed a top 10 finish in Moto number 2. So he's definitely capable of riding. Hopefully the surgery is not too invasive and it goes well, and hopefully he can come out swinging for SMX, but either way, he is now out for the rest of motocross. Unfortunately, Joey Savacci is another casualty of Redbud. He went down in the first turn. Sounds like he suffered a leg injury and he will not be competing this weekend. As far as Aaron Plessinger, he is also dealing with some stuff, but it sounds like it's more illness related. He was not able to line up for Moto number 2, so that was unfortunate, especially given that it was at Redbud. But he's going to be lining back up this weekend. Hopefully he's feeling a little bit better. And then unfortunately, Fast Freddie Noren, will not be lining up this weekend either. He's pretty banged up and it sounds like he's going to have to sit out at least a few weeks. No real clarification beyond that. And then we have another new injury with Derek Kelly, who ended up breaking his fibula at Redbud, so he is now going to be out. And then we got to give a big shout out to Grant Harlan. We saw him rush back from breaking his ribs, and he's been doing pretty good so far, even though he's essentially racing with broken ribs. Then unfortunately we did see him go down at Redbud, and he was not able to get out of the way. It was on the opening lap, and he ended up getting his leg ran over. So it sounds like now his leg is giving him issues. Not sure if it's broken. We haven't heard anything official out of Grant Harlan yet, but we do know for sure that he's not going to be competing this weekend. So Grant, feel better. You're a trooper. Hope to see you back out here soon. All right, moving on to our 250 class points and storylines. At the top, we have Hayden Deegan. And last weekend was pretty interesting and a little rough for Hayden. He did end up getting a 14th in Moto 1, but he bounced back pretty strong in Moto 2, going all the way up to 2nd, coming up through the field. He is definitely a little bit banged up. He obviously had that practice crash, and then he crashed again in Moto number 1, and it sounds like that banged him up even more. But the fact that he was able to go out there in Moto 2 and still work his way up to 2nd is pretty encouraging, so hopefully he can bounce back this weekend. I'm sure he's still sore, so we'll have to keep an eye on that. In 2nd in the championship, now only 38 points back, which is still a lot, but a lot closer than he was, is Joe Shimoda. And shout out to Joe Shimoda for a great ride last weekend. He went 1-1. It was really great to see Joe get out there and get a win. He can't control what Hayden's doing, but what he could control is what he was doing, and he executed perfectly, rode really well, so that was great to see. I'm curious to see if that momentum carries at all into this weekend or not. He's definitely been the 2nd best guy overall on the motocross season, and even in SMX points right now, he's definitely 2nd. So it would be pretty cool to see him give Hayden more battles as we come up into the end of the season. And we have even seen him battle Hayden in the playoffs before, so that would be pretty cool to see him take it all the way through the rest of the season. 3rd in the championship, 47 points behind Joe Shimoda, we have the number 47 of Levi Kitchen. Now, I don't think this gap would be nearly as big if he didn't struggle so bad in Moto number 2 last weekend. He looked really good, had a strong 2nd in Moto 1, and was charging hard. Maybe could have fought for that Moto win in Moto 2, but then he ended up going over that turn and crashing. It seemed like he was actually going to be out of the race for a minute, but he ended up getting his bike straightened out and working his way all the way back up to 19th to at least grab a few points, but definitely a rough Moto number 2 for him last weekend. It's great to see that he does have some speed though, so hopefully he can keep that going and continue to be a podium guy. He's been on the podium the last few races up until that 2nd moto last weekend, so I expect that to probably continue this weekend. Now 4th in the championship, only 3 points behind Levi, we have Tom Vial, and somehow he managed to have a worse weekend than Levi. But one thing that I thought was pretty interesting is Levi's 219 was good enough for a 7th place overall, where Tom Vial went 321, and that was only good enough for 13th overall. So kind of crazy. The finishes in the motos were not that different, but the overalls were drastically different. Anyways, we saw Tom have a pretty solid first moto, and then he tangled up with Michael Moseman off of the start in moto number 2, and that kind of ruined his race. So with Joe going 1-1 and these two guys kind of struggling in moto 2, that definitely widened the gap between 2nd and 3rd in the points. And then 5th in the championship, only 2 points behind Tom Vial, we have Garrett Marchbanks. He didn't necessarily have a great weekend last weekend, but he was at least solid in both motos. He went 10-12 for 10th overall. So definitely not quite as strong of a ride as we're used to seeing out of him in motocross so far this year, but not terrible. 6th in the championship, another 35 points back from Garrett Marchbanks. We have Michael Moseman. And man, it was awesome to see Michael get on the overall podium last weekend. It feels like he's had his fair share of bad luck so far this season, and it was cool to see something kind of break his way. He went 4-4 for 3rd overall, and he's just been riding really solid. Personally, I'm really curious to see what team he ends up on next season. I'm not sure if he'll be a star or not, but either way, he's riding great. 7th in the championship, only 5 points behind Michael Mosiman. We have Mikkel Harep. And believe it or not, he actually got 4th overall right behind Michael Mosiman last weekend. So he's been definitely coming around as well. That whole Triumph team is starting to look a little bit better, especially Jalek Swoll. But anyways, it's great to have Mikkel out there. And I'm curious to see if he can bring home an overall podium before the season's over. 8th in the championship right now is where we have Chance Hymas. So he's probably going to be falling outside of your top 10 pretty soon. Then 9th in the championship, 20 points behind Mikkel, we have Max Voland. He actually struggled a bit in Moto 1 last weekend, only able to bring home a 15th, but then we saw some pretty good signs of life in Moto 2 where he finished 8th. And it's great to just see him out there logging laps. He's so far ahead of all the other non-factory riders in the points right now. And every weekend he's consistently beating factory guys. So shout out to Max Voland, you're killing it. Love to see it. 2 points behind Max. Rounding out the top 10 right now, we have Seth Hamaker. And he did kind of the opposite of what Max did last weekend. He did really good in Moto 1. He finished in the top 5, so that was a great start to the day. And then he was only able to bring home a 16th in Moto number 2. I didn't quite catch exactly what happened. I would imagine it was probably a tip over or something. Either way, it's great to have Seth out there, and the fact that he's out there battling throughout the rest of the season is going to probably keep him in the top 5 into the SMX seeding right now. He's just a few points ahead of Julian Beaumer, but Juju's going to be sitting out the next few rounds, so he'll definitely be one to watch as we head into the playoffs. 11th in the championship is where we find Ty Masterpool, but again, he's not going to be racing for at least the next couple of rounds. So the next closest guy is going to be Jordan Smith, and he's 15 points behind Hamaker right now. He actually seemed to be riding pretty good last weekend. He brought home a nice top 10 in Moto number 1, and then he got off to a really good start in Moto 2, and then we all saw what happened. He went flying off the side of the track and almost landed on one of the Club MX guys, but luckily that worked out, and then he eventually crashed into the monster can. What was really unfortunate about that whole situation is that he did end up getting back on his bike and pushing through the rest of the moto, only to come up in 22nd and miss getting any points by 1 position. That being said, he's still top 10 in SMX seeding, and he'll probably pass Chance Hymas by the end of the season. In 13th is where we have Juju, but he's also going to be out. Then jumping all the way up to 14th in the championship, only 16 points behind Jordan Smith, we have Ryder DeFrancisco. And it's great to finally see some real flashes out of him. He was able to put down the fastest qualifier in both practice sessions. He looked really good, and he actually rode really well in Moto 2. Oddly enough, he went 12.6 for 6th overall. So pretty crazy, but still a solid overall finish and definitely a step in the right direction. 2 points behind Ryder D, we have Dylan Schwartz, and he kind of had a good moto and a bad moto last weekend. He went 38.7, so no points scored in the first moto. 7th in the second moto. It's good to see that he definitely has the speed and the fitness. Not really sure what happened in the first moto. Could have been a bike issue. But anytime you see Dylan Schwartz up there with a good start, definitely don't count him out for a solid finish. Then in 16th is where we find Casey Cochran. And like I said in the injury updates, he's also out. Then 9 points behind Dylan Schwartz is where we find Jalek Swoll. And after only 3 rounds, he's all the way up to 17th in the championship, which might not sound like a lot. But his teammate Austin Faulkner, who's been competing the entire season, is all the way back in 21st. So he's definitely been killing it. He got 2nd overall last weekend. He brought Triumph their first motocross podium last year at Unadilla, and he has already backed that up this year in his 3rd race back. So shout out to Jalek Swoll. Love to see it. Only 2 points behind Jalek. In 18th, we have Parker Ross, and he had 2 rounds in the middle of the season where he did not score any points, but the other 4 rounds have been pretty great. Last weekend, he finished with an 8th place overall. He's looking really strong, really fit, and if it weren't for not scoring any points at a couple of the rounds, he would probably be making a good case for being the best non-factory rider instead of Max Voland. In 19th, another 5 points back, we have Nate Thrasher. He ended up going 7:15 for 11th overall last weekend, and I understand that Nate Thrasher did win a Supercross race, but it's stuff like this where, he's riding solid, he's doing okay, but I don't understand how Michael Mosiman could just be overlooked for a ride and Nate Thrasher just gets a ride. I don't know Bobby Reagan, and I'm not saying that's exactly how it's going to work out, but it's just kind of weird. I understand Nate's been dealing with some injuries and things like that, and this is not anything against Nate Thrasher. I just want to see Michael Mosiman on a factory team next year. And then rounding out your top 20, only 1 point behind Nate Thrasher, we have Drew Adams. Now he is also rushing back from an injury. He was only able to go 17-17 last weekend, so definitely struggling. I'm not sure exactly what's going on there. He's been much better earlier on in the season, so I do expect that to come back around. And then, like I alluded to earlier, you have to go back another 21 points to find Austin Faulkner in 21st place. And this is a bit concerning. He was able to score points in one of the motos last weekend, where he did get a 14th, which is reasonable, but his overall motocross season has been pretty alarming. We've seen him win motocross races. I'm pretty sure that he even won motocross overalls in his rookie season. Now, I didn't expect him to win or even get a top 5 or anything like that, but I did expect at least some top 10 moto finishes at some point, and we just have not seen that. There's a really good chance that he could race the entire season and just not even qualify into SMX. Right now, he's actually 2 positions away from even being into the SMX playoffs, or at least directly into the main events. He's only 5 points away from passing Cullen Park, and if he gets another 19 points, then he will pass Cody Schock. That being said, he does have Drew Adams, Dylan Schwartz, and even Jalik Swoll all lurking not too far behind him. So if any of those 3 guys were to pass him back, that would bump him back out. Now, obviously, he would try to race the LCQs, I'm sure, but that's pretty crazy to think that he could essentially line up for every race this season and still not even qualify into the top 18 overall. And now moving on to the 450 class, obviously at the top we have Jet Lawrence. He's only left 10 points on the table so far this season, and we got a real taste of what he's capable of in that second moto when he came all the way back from 18th to 1st. Personally, I still thought that was pretty cool to see. I did find it entertaining, and I also thought it was interesting that Chase Sexton was essentially able to match his pace for the most part as he worked his way up through the field. So it would seem that Chase has something to offer. Not sure exactly what that's going to look like moving forward, but it's good to see that there is still some depth in this field. Jet's obviously the favorite, definitely the fastest guy out there, but I'm sure that there are some guys out there who can beat him at times. That being said, I don't see him losing an overall this season. We have to go another 51 points back to find his brother Hunter Lawrence, who's definitely stepped it up. Looks like the Hondas are starting to gel with the tracks a lot more. The setups are looking good. The riders are looking good. And the whole Honda team absolutely dominated last weekend, but it was total domination in the 450 class where the Lawrence brothers ended up going 1 and 2. And this is the 3rd week in a row that Hunter has been 2nd overall. Now moving into 3rd in the championship, 18 points behind Hunter Lawrence, we have Justin Cooper. And, well, it looks like as long as Justin Cooper can stay healthy and do his thing, he's actually going to be your number 1 seed heading into the playoffs. We have Cooper Webb sitting out the rest of the season. Aaron Plessinger missed a moto last weekend. So just like that, Justin Cooper essentially has a 43-point lead over the rest of the field in the playoff seeding. So shout out to J Coop. I'm not sure why his name's not at least being mentioned in consideration for the Motocross of Nations team. I understand that AP is a great pick, Eli is a great pick, and so is Chase. But to be honest with you, J Coop has been super clutch in our Motocross of Nation races in the past. He won his class in 2022, and he's absolutely killing it right now. He's staying very consistent. And I'm not even saying that he should be a pick. I'm just saying that I think he should at least be in the conversation. My gut feeling actually says that we should probably send Eli, Chase, and Hayden, but I don't think you can just overlook AP or J Coop either. 4 points behind J Coop is where we find Eli Tomac, and he's dropped all the way back to 4th in the championship. I actually had my hopes up a little bit as we saw him kind of working his way up through the field until his bike ended up breaking. And we all knew that him having a chance at the championship was a long shot at this point, but it still sucks to see that just completely sucked out the window with half the season still left. It would take an absolute catastrophic failure for Jet Lawrence for him to really get back in it at this point, and the chances of that happening are not that great. So I'm curious to see exactly how that plays for Eli moving forward. Knowing that he's essentially fully eliminated from the championship, does that loosen him up? Does it change anything? Either way, it's great to have Eli out there. I hope he has some more flashes of greatness moving forward that keep him excited and have that spark moving forward. We've heard him say many times that as long as he's capable of winning, he's going to keep racing. So I just want him to feel like he's still capable of winning. That way we get to keep seeing him out there. And then rounding out your top 5 in the points, 13 points behind Eli Tomac, we have Aaron Plessinger. And I'm really curious to see exactly how AP is able to do this weekend. He actually looked like he had some speed in that first moto. Then unfortunately, he did not end up competing in that second moto. Sounds like it's not something so straightforward as a simple cold. So don't be too surprised if he continues to struggle this weekend. 6th in the championship, 19 points behind Aaron Plessinger, we have RJ Hampshire. And it was so cool to see RJ Hampshire get up there on the podium. I remember thinking as he was on the podium in Moto number 1 that out of all the Americans that I would have expected or been excited to see on the podium in either class this weekend, RJ was not one of them. No offense to RJ. He's a great rider, but he's been consistently around that 6th place all season long. I did mention in this show last weekend that he's had some really good results in the past at Redbud, so maybe we see something like that. And sure enough, we did. We saw the signs of speed. It was great to see him out there. Unfortunately, he did fade back to that 6th place spot in Moto number 2, which bumped him off of the overall podium. But nonetheless, some great riding out of him, and I'm looking forward to the rest of the season. In 7th is where we find Cooper Webb. So we have to jump back another 38 points to find Jorge Prado, who is the next closest rider to RJ Hampshire. And it looks like things are starting to turn around for Jorge Prado. He was able to get some laps led. He definitely had the speed, and he definitely faded in that second moto. But nonetheless, things are looking better. We saw a couple of flashes at Southwick, a couple of flashes at Redbud. I don't think you need to think about it too deep beyond that. Things are getting better. He's definitely not where he should be. But to be honest, I feel like that is to be expected. In 9th, another 23 points back, we have Joey Savacci. And unfortunately, like I said, Joey did go down in a first turn crash, so he's not going to be racing this weekend. Really hate to see that. He had established himself well inside the top 10 in the SMX seeding. Now he'll probably finish somewhere around 12th. There aren't a whole lot of specifics about what's going on with him right now other than it was a leg injury, so I'm curious to see when he comes back. Rounding out your top 10, another 13 points behind Savacci, we have Jason Anderson. Now, things have been pretty quiet for Jason Anderson so far this motocross season. He did get a top 10 in Moto number 1, and then he basically didn't score any points in Moto number 2, so I'm not sure exactly what's going on with that. He's definitely riding okay. He's out there collecting a paycheck. Things could be worse. Sounds like he's definitely leaving the team, so we'll have to see what happens with him next year. 6 points behind Anderson, we have Malcolm Stewart, and he had one of his better overall finishes of the season so far last weekend, finishing 8th overall, so at least that was encouraging. Sounds like he is starting to feel a little bit better from that high point crash, but it also sounds like he's definitely looking forward to the 2-week break after Washougal. I don't think he's feeling great. He's not fully comfortable on the bike, and I don't believe he's fully healed, but it's always great to have Mookie out there. It sounds like he probably is going to be staying with this team next year, but he did specifically say in an interview this week that he's not exactly sure where he's going. The stress levels are still pretty high.
Stress. We're still really? Gonna stress all the way to the end. I mean, you know, it's one of those situations we're trying to find a legitimate hard deal. But let's put it this way: am I sleeping a little bit better at night? Yes, but it ain't done until it's all the way done.
So keep an eye on that. He's probably going to keep pushing for the rest of the season. 7 points behind Mookie, we have Benoit Patrel. He almost got a top 10 finish last weekend, finishing 11th overall on the day. He has been top 10 multiple times this season, though. He's riding pretty good. He's all the way up to 22nd right now in the SMX seeding, and it looks like it's going to be a great battle between him, Cody Schock, and Valentin Guillot as far as who's going to get 19th in the seeding, which really doesn't mean a whole lot except you're the first guy not in the main event. It's going to be really close. If one of these guys can have a really good second half of the motocross season, they could catch Shane McElrath by the playoffs, but it's going to be pretty tight on points. In 13th, 9 points behind Pat Terrell, we have Cody Schock, and it really sucks to see some of the mishaps that Cody's had in motos so far this season. He did bring home a pretty good finish in Moto 1, did not score any points in Moto 2 last weekend. He's had a couple of really good hole shots this season, which is great to see. And he did score a few 450 points at the Daytona Supercross. I'm pretty sure he's going to stick to 450s now after seeing how things kind of went this year. He's probably just going to miss getting into the playoffs on either bike. So with the confidence that he's getting from racing 450 motocross this season, as well as the fact that he was able to score points in his first ever 450 Supercross attempt on the Club MX bike, I'm pretty sure he's probably just going to go full-time 450 next season. If he's able to get back out there and start getting some top 10s consistently, he could work his way into 18th by the end of the season as far as the SMX seeding and go directly to the main events. But even if he doesn't, he's really good at Supercross and he's been killing it in motocross, so I'm sure he could get his way through the LCQs. If we jump back another 5 points, that's where we'll find Valentin Guillot. He actually had a really rough weekend last weekend. He went 1737, so only scoring points in that first moto, and even at that, he didn't score much. It sounds like it was just a mechanical issue in that second moto, and he should be alright. Probably going to come out swinging this weekend in Minnesota. 15th in the championship, another 4 points back, we have Harry Kulas, and he's actually been trending in the opposite direction as all these other guys. He's been improving quite a bit. He did really good at Southwick last year, and he did really good at Redbud last year, and he's backed that up this year. He was kind of a force not to be reckoned with in Supercross. He actually tried to race 250s, and he got off to a relatively slow start in the 450 motocross season, and now he's really turned it around. So I'm curious to see exactly how that works moving forward. Does he continue to be a top 10 guy? He got a top 10 overall last weekend. Technically, he's still within striking distance of that 18th spot. It's a very long shot, but if he continues to best these guys for the rest of the season, maybe he could get in there. Then we have to jump another 27 points back to find the 45 of Colt Nichols. I'm not sure exactly what's going on with him. He did not score any points last weekend. He went 29-34. We've seen him be relatively close to top 10 moto scores before this season. That being said, he has not raced that much 450 motocross in his career, but he shouldn't be outside of the top 30. That's pretty wild, but that does go to show you just how deep this field is. Moving up to 17th in the points, only 1 point behind Colt, we have Justin Barcia. Not much to say about Justin Barcia other than he looks really good, a little bit better than I was expecting. It sounds like he's not going to be with the Gas team next year. All signs are pointing for him to go to Ducati, and it looks like Ducati could have something good on their hands. He came out swinging, and he hasn't stopped since. He quietly finished 7th overall right behind Jorge Prado last weekend, so he's definitely not right up there with the front guys, but he's really not that far off either. In 18th is where we find Grant Harlan. Like I said, he's not going to be racing this weekend, but shout out to Grant Harlan. He's a trooper. He's been through some pretty bad injuries these last couple of years, so I hope he's doing all right. In 19th, we have Mitchell Harrison, and he's only 1 point behind Grant Harlan, so as long as he scores some points this weekend, he'll actually bump up another spot. And he's quietly mixed in between all these guys who are trying to push forward in the points and all the guys who already have points and are not racing. He's definitely not scoring as many motocross points as guys like Cody Schock, but right now he's actually ahead of them in SMX seeding due to his Supercross points. So I don't think he'll be able to get in there and nab that 18th place spot, but technically he's the closest one right now. Rounding out your top 20, another 11 points back, we have Lorenzo Locurcio. He went out and got a 15th in Moto number 2, and it did seem a bit like he capitalized on everyone else's mistakes, but he's been scoring points all season long. He looks pretty good. And he's out there running a team, all the while racing in the Premier class. So shout out to Locurcio. Great to see him out there doing his thing. And then after his first race, jumping all the way up to 21st, we have Chase Sexton. Great to see Chase out there. Not much to say. He looked really good last weekend. He did follow Jet up through the field, and he did tuck the front. I'm not sure what it's going to take for him to start in front of Jet, but if that ever does happen, I would not be surprised at all if he wins that moto. And then I quickly want to jump back to 27th, where we'll find Antonio Cairoli. He's going to be racing again this weekend, but it sounds like he would actually really like to race a bit more this year.
This SMX thing, if you can qualify in top 30, can be also a thing, The SMX is without books.
It's true.
So, I don't know. It's just coming to my mind this week because I see the standing and I'm like already probably 42 or 43.
Yeah.
With just one moto, and top 30 can access the SMX. So why not? I mean, you never know.
So listening to him say that, it sounds like he sees how many points he got in one moto, and he's like, shoot, man, it wouldn't be that hard to get into the SMX LCQs, and, that sounds kind of fun, and winning money is cool, and, Motocross of Nations wouldn't be too bad either. So, shoot, let's race. Now, I'm not saying that's going to happen. Obviously, there's a lot of politics that goes into all that, but I would love to see that. Either way, it's great to see the Ducati out there. Great to see Cairoli. It sounds like the bike issue that they had last weekend was electrical related, and I'm going to extrapolate based off of what I heard them saying. It sounds like there was a connector that was next to something that was heating up, and it probably melted. So the fact that it was pretty hot that weekend and the connector was probably not in the best location, it should be a relatively easy fix. They relocated that, and moving forward, they don't expect it to happen again. As far as the weather and schedule, things are looking pretty good. The schedule is going back to the traditional 250s first, 450s second, with a halftime in between. Minnesota is Central Time, so Race Day Live will kick off at 11 Eastern, and the race itself will start at 2 Eastern. And the weather is looking absolutely perfect. The high is 77. It'll be 77 through most of the racing. You really can't ask for much better than that, especially in the summertime. Moving on to some rider statistics. This is for if you're betting, playing fantasy, or you just like to know some things about the riders. I know the fantasy is usually based off of the 450 class, but I want to get a couple things about the 250 class out of the way first in case people are making bets, and I just thought they were interesting. Looking at Hayden Deegan, he has never won a moto here at Spring Creek, just like he never won at Redbud. So I'm not here to say we should expect the same type of performance, but what I am saying is he's still banged up. He hasn't had good luck here in the past, so just keep that in mind. If you're betting, hedge your bets. Also, I thought it's worth mentioning that Levi Kitchen got his first career overall win here last year, and he has been coming on strong lately. He went 1-1 here last year, and if he can win the overall here again this year, he'll be their first repeat 250 winner since Eli Tomac did it in 2012 and 2013. Also, I just want to give a shout out to Jeremy Martin. He's never been outside of the top 5 at any of his appearances at his home track. He's raced here 7 times, so I'm not saying that we should expect him to be in the top 5, but I do look forward to seeing what he can do today. As far as the 450 class, I think it's hard not to bet on Jet Lawrence getting the win. He has not lost an overall so far this season. He's only ever lost 1 overall, and that's when he crashed completely out of the race. Looking at Chase Sexton, he did go 1-1 here last year, but that was without Eli Tomac or Jet Lawrence. That being said, Chase Sexton was able to pass every single one of those riders in Moto number 2 last weekend. As far as Eli Tomac goes, he does have 3 overall wins here at this track, and he did win the last time he was here. That was against Chase Sexton, so he'll definitely have his work cut out for him this weekend if he wants to do it against this whole field. He has not been able to be in the top 2 in any of the last 3 rounds, so he is starting to trend in the wrong direction. Hopefully he can bounce back this weekend. Hunter Lawrence did do pretty good here last year. He has a slew of top 5 moto finishes if you go back through his 250 career, and last year he did go 2-2 right behind Chase Sexton. Given the way he's been trending, I feel like it's hard not to consider him at least a serious podium threat this weekend. And as far as Justin Cooper, he's also had a lot of success here. He did take the final step on the podium here last year, beating out Aaron Plessinger, and he does have a lot of speed here. He has the track record for the most 250 pole positions in qualifying, and we've been consistently seeing him get pole positions in the 450 class this year. So just because he's the fastest on qualifying doesn't necessarily mean he's going to win the race, but we do know he has a particularly good vibe at this track. So with Aaron Plessinger being out, I would look towards these 5 guys likely being your top 5. If you're playing Rocky Mountain and you need to find a 13th place wild card, that's going to be pretty tricky this week. There's a lot of movement around that range right now. You could kind of start to eliminate things down. We already covered 5 guys. You could fill out the rest of the top 10 with guys like RJ Hampshire, Jorge Prado, Justin Barcia, Malcolm Stewart, then maybe Jason Anderson, Antonio Cairoli. That's already 11 guys. So now we're starting to look at guys like Schock, Pat Terrell, Kulas. It's really kind of a dice roll around that range. I would probably watch qualifying and then get a feel for who's really in that range. If you're okay with oversimplifying things, Harry Kulas is 15th in points right now. So once you remove Aaron Plessinger and Cooper Webb, that would bump him up 2 spots, which would be 13th. But I'm going to go ahead and leave it there. If you guys made it through the whole entire video, thank you so much for sticking around. Make sure you leave a comment down below as far as who you guys think is going to be on the podium in both classes. Thank you guys for watching, and I will see you in the next video.